My topic for today is about the faith or a Christian faith. I was given the task to talk to you about the Christian and his family, but I thought of probably dealing more with the Christian faith and how we as a family need to live this, need to grow, and need to develop this, and to pass it on. Of the things that tayong mga parents po ay, of course, we are very concerned about our children, and we know that we will do everything we can within our resources to provide the very best for our children. And this is a quote from somebody by the name of Patrick Henry. You probably don't know him. This is what he says. I have now disposed of all my property to my family. There is one thing more I wish I could give them, and that is faith in Jesus Christ. If they had that, and I had not given them a single shilling, they would have been rich. And if they had not that, and I had given them all the world, they would be poor indeed. So this is Patrick Henry is actually a lawyer, a patriot, an orator, and a founding father of America. So he lived during the 1700s. This quote illustrates the ultimate concern every parent has in wanting to provide the very, very best for their children. Parents always think about the welfare of their children, they think about their health, they think about their future. And good parents do their very best to deal with the realities of life and all the challenges that may come children's way. That is why for many Filipino parents, giving children education is probably the best investment that you will hear parents say that they can give their children. Even rich parents would still want their children to go to school, even though they don't necessarily need to go to school to earn money, to get a degree and earn money. Still, even rich parents would still want their children to have an education, to teach them what life is all about, and not just making money. Education, on the other hand, can secure children's future better than riches would, as this quotation just says. So in one sense, education is actually the truest riches if we're talking about life here on earth. As Christian family and parents, we can also identify with these sentiments. Yet we also know that for most part, education still is limited in the overall welfare and true future for our children. Beyond having material provisions, beyond having the best possible education, we know that the spiritual needs of our children would also have to be met and addressed. Educating the mind must be coupled with educating and fulfilling the needs of the soul or the spirit in the child. This is where faith comes in. What is the importance of faith to our families? If we feel that it is of great importance, how do we parents pass this family faith to our children? What is the implication of passing on our faith to our children and others? These are the questions that we will try to answer in my message for today. Our text will be taken from, basically from the second letter of Paul to Timothy. I will also be touching a little bit on Acts, but I will be dealing on the person of Timothy. And there will be 3 points that I will share with you on how we live our faith and how we share this. So I will be talking primarily on the character of Timothy. And I titled this message, Timothy, Living the Family faith. Let's first go to Acts 16, where Timothy is introduced. Okay. This is Paul now. Paul came to Derbe and then to Lystra, where a disciple named Timothy lived. This is part of Greece, whose mother was Jewish and a believer, but whose father was a Greek. So the way the statement was said is that he has a Jewish mother, but whose father was a Greek, indicating the contrast that the father did not actually believe or was not a believer. So that is understandable because Greeks don't usually share in the religious faith of the Jews, but they were married, okay? The believers at Lystra and Iconium spoke well of Timothy. And Paul wanted to take him along on the journey, so he circumcised him because of the Jews who lived in that area, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. The reason for the circumcision is because of the ministry of Timothy, and Timothy also having a Jewish mother. So it is something that's expected of someone of a Jew origin. It seems to say also, as some commentators say, that the father seems to have died, because there was no mention of the father other than this one. That's why he was able to join in Paul's ministry at a later time. So what does this mean? The text implies that the mother remained faithful in practicing her faith even though her husband was an unbeliever. The text also shows that the father seems to be a little bit gave the freedom to the mother to practice her belief, and did not force her to not believe in the Jewish teachings. Something in the example of Timothy's mother, okay, made a positive impression on Timothy, that the believers in Lystra spoke quite well of him. Okay? So when they think of Timothy, they think of him as one of the best believers. So what does that mean? It means that Timothy got his belief or his faith from his mother. Okay? So what is, in terms of what we want to learn in terms of our living our faith and sharing our faith, the very first principle that we can see is that parents must be the primary models of faith to their children. Okay? I know this is something we already know. Most of us do know this. But there are some parents in which, when it comes to school, we want the school system, the teachers to be the primary teachers, and the parents just distance themselves and not have to do with the things of school. We also have parents who think that when it comes to matters of faith, the church need to take care of that, and that they as parents need not be involved in the raising of their children and teaching them things about religion, for example, or their faith. But as we have learned in the case of Timothy, parents play a vital role in the faith of their children. In fact, it is a responsibility that is taken on, in this case the mother, towards Timothy. Let's look at this. Here, 2 Timothy. I am reminded of you, this is Paul again, talking about Timothy. I'm reminded of your sincere faith. Kanina, believers spoke very well of him. And here, Paul is saying, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother, Lois, and your mother, Eunice. What does that say? Faith is modeled In this case, by the mother of Timothy's mother, or the grandmother. And because of that modeling, because of that being faithful and living out that faith, it is passed on to the next generation, and Timothy being the third generation. So we see that parents indeed have a very important role to play. In a patriarchal society of that time, the mothers were homemakers. And they spent much time at home, and because of that, they are actually the first teachers to their children. And part of the teachings that Eunice taught his son Timothy is their Jewish tradition and faith. When she was converted to the Christian faith, she too felt the need to live that faith and pass it on. Paul is convinced that Timothy had the genuine faith. Okay? It's not just a temporary, superficial faith, but sincere faith, meaning a genuine faith. This faith had been passed on from generation to generation. The grandmother and Mother Timothy valued their faith so much that they were compelled to live it and to share it. This makes us ask the question, how important is our faith to us personally and individually? I believe that we will pass on to our children only that which we feel is most important to us. And if faith is not important to us, our children will never be able to have it from us or get it from us. To the degree that our faith is relevant in our daily lives, will be the same degree we will want to pass on this faith to our children, so they too will find relevance and meaning in their daily lives. So we clearly see a conscious effort to teach the Christian faith as one of the, let's just say, a heritage, a legacy that we can pass on to children, and which hopefully they will pass on to their children. Meron po ba sa atin ang third generation Christian dito? Third generation? Oh, meron na. So, sino bang third generation? When the church started in the Philippines, it was sometime in the 50s. Yeah. Oh. So, yung anak ni Ray. Diba? Ni Ray. So that's why the third, or maybe, no. So it's nice to see that. I think that's something that we need to value, need to appreciate. And it's nice to have a family that worships together and share the same common faith. As parents, this is primarily our responsibility. It does not rest on the church. It does not rest on our pastors. The faith that we need to live and share and pass on is on our shoulders. It's our responsibility. Continuing now for our next principle. Let's go to 1 Timothy 1, 2 Timothy 1 verse 6. For this reason, I remind you, this is Paul, talking to or writing to Timothy, to fan into flame the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. So Paul is reminding Timothy of his gift from God. I remind you. At the same time, Paul is also encouraging him to kindle it, to make it more alive each day. Paul also assures him that this valuable treasure of faith is in him, in you. Something that is part of him. Something that is inside him. Something that is not just a possession. Okay? It's not just a possession, but something that is part of who he really is as a person, because it is a genuine faith. The proof is not the physical seeing of the faith. Okay? Paul cannot see the actual faith inside Timothy, but he can see the results, the demonstration, the works that come from that faith. And Paul is saying that faith is in you. I know that you have it. Paul is saying, I don't doubt one bit that you have the faith. So he is trying to encourage Timothy. Bible scholars generally believe that Timothy was at least in his 30s when he entered the ministry. Okay? So this letter of Paul to him, 1st and 2nd Timothy, was at the time in Timothy's life when he was probably in his 30s, mid-30s, which means that he is basically new in ministry, but that he's not also that young. But he took on the pastoral responsibilities when he was in his 30s. However, he was about 16 or 17 years old when he first encountered Paul in one of Paul's missionary journeys in Greece. Timothy may have witnessed the power of the gospel when Paul was preaching. He may have been convicted by the Holy Spirit by the teachings of Paul when Paul did some miracles, and Timothy was convinced at that very early age, 16 to 17 years old. So he saw how people's lives were changed, and he saw how his life, his own life also changed as he learned more about this gospel and practiced it, as he learned about the faith. Think about that. Ano ang level in terms of schooling ng bata na nasa 16 or 17 years of age? High school, di ba? Or maybe college. Is there a significance to this age in terms of our youth in the church when it comes to their being committed and being conscious of their faith? Maybe. A lot of us came to the church when we were, or came to know the teachings of the church when we were in this age. Okay? I for one, have been very interested with the different teachings of various churches, and I came across the World Tomorrow, yung telecast natin, when I was probably mostly my high school. So, ganun yun. So probably parang I can identify with Timothy's experience. Just to add to that, research shows also that, let me go back. Okay. We see that Timothy most likely committed to live the Christian faith when he was in his teens, even as the seeds of faith was already present when he was still a baby, as we will read later. Paul is underlining the fact that parents' faith can have such an influence even to a tiny baby. I will show that to you later. Just to add to that, research shows that babies learn many things while in the womb. Alam ba natin yun? Babies learn, for example, there are parents when they are pregnant, they read a lot, and when the child is born, few years later, the child seems to be advanced when it comes to his or her reading abilities. So we can see that a child can actually learn something, and this includes what the mother's faith is. So this is interesting. Learning happens even before a baby is born. Faith can be planted even before a baby is born. Think about that and what that means. Okay? So here's a mother reading, and whatever the experiences of the mother, whatever thoughts, and whatever development in her own faith is somehow assimilated or affects the baby in the womb. Of course, we see here a father teaching the child, and it's just basically a passing on. Okay? But what needs to be said here is that babies can learn at such a very young age, even before they were born. When the baby is born, when the child grows, so will their faith. As parents, we need to be constantly looking for opportunities not only to teach, but also along the lines of affirming, encouraging our children's faith experiences. Just like what Paul did, he reminded, he encouraged, and he affirmed the faith of Timothy. So with us, we need to be affirming, encouraging, teaching our children to live the faith. So my principle number 2 here is children must be constantly affirmed and encouraged to live their faith and grow in it. I like this picture here of a father teaching, is that a son or a daughter? Mukhang long hair, so probably a daughter teaching her to ride a bike. And a father would not just leave the child to go and then, kaya mo yan and all that. No, there has to be a constant guiding, holding initially. Okay? And then, when the child is able, bibitawan niya, di ba? Tumatakbo sila, and all that. And then, hawak-hawak niya, di ba niya? Hindi alam nung anak, hindi na pala humahawak yung tatay. You know? And then, nung nalaman nung anak, wow, kaya mo pala. So, there's a lot of encouragement when it comes to the riding of a bicycle, but so it is with faith. We parents need to be guiding at this, but at the same time be very encouraging and affirming when our children show signs of interest in the Bible, show signs of interest in Jesus Christ and all that. We need to be supportive. We need to be doing what we can to make sure that we constantly affirm and encourage our children to live and grow in the faith. Sabi ni Paul, but as for you, continue in what you have learned and have become convinced of. Okay? Encouraging. Because you know those from whom you learned it. And how from infancy, this is what I was trying to say, Paul knew that from infancy you have known the Holy Scriptures. Is Paul saying a joke here from infancy? Or did Paul actually recognize the influence of a mother reading the Scripture and actually passing that knowledge to the brain, to the mind of the child, even the child may not be able to speak it yet, speak the language yet? But Paul is saying here, from infancy you have known the Holy Scriptures. So there's that recognition of the influence of the mother, at the same time encouraging Timothy to go on and live that faith. Because the faith, coming from the Holy Scriptures, are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. If all else fails, when it comes to our resources or what we give our children in terms of inheritance, it is the knowledge of salvation through faith in Jesus Christ that will secure their eternal future. And we would rather want parents who may not have much in terms of material blessings to give their children, but have this knowledge and conviction to share their faith with their children. Lastly, the church must be responsible to pass on the faith to the greater church family, okay, of believers. So this is not just family in which generation after generation, the faith is passed on, as in the case of Lois and Eunice to Timothy, but this is now talking about Timothy as the leader in the church, as a father to the believers, that he has a responsibility to make sure that when they meet as a church, the faith is cultivated, the faith is given such importance that as a church, we live that faith, and so that we all grow in it and we mature in that faith. The church must be responsible to pass on the faith to the greater church family of believers. There will be people who come to church who have never heard the gospel, who have never come from a family of believers. Okay, so these are the people that we need to minister to. And the church has that responsibility. It says here in 2 Timothy 3, verse 17, all scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. Faith must be Bible-based. For God breathed out His will into the Word or our scriptures. The Bible is the foundation of faith. That's why we as a church need to make sure that when we preach, when we teach, it is Bible-based. There are lots of stories and characters in the Bible that can serve to clarify our own faith journeys in life. Hebrews 11 is one example in which faith is first defined, and then we have people enumerated who lived a life of faith. And those are generations after generations. From Abraham, maybe up to the present. Okay? So there must be a high regard for the Bible, because without the Bible there is no basis for faith. The Bible has to be practiced and applied, and as a church we need to be doing that. Our children, toddlers, the teenagers need to see that in our church there is high regard for scriptures. So in our church, I think we do that. In the matter of church preaching and ministry, Paul has this instruction for Timothy. In the presence of God and of Jesus Christ, who will judge the living and the dead, and in view of His appearing in His kingdom, I give you this charge, being a church father himself, Timothy. Okay? Preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, and encourage. Why? To keep everybody within the faith, with great patience and careful instruction. For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Even in the church, there will be those who will reject sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers who say what their itching ears want to hear. And this is a danger. We need to be careful also as leaders in the church to make sure that we preach correctly. But at the same time, when we are listening, we need to be careful about what we hear also. Because sometimes, either unintentionally or sometimes intentionally, a preacher may actually have an agenda that is not of the Bible. Okay? So we need to be careful. So there will be teachers who teach what the congregation want to hear rather than what is being taught in the Bible. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. What is a myth? Something that is man-made. Something that is concocted or created by the imagination of man. It's very attractive, but it is not the truth. Sometimes myths are packaged in such a way that they sound, academically excellent, very, very interesting for intelligent people. These are for intelligent people. These are for those who actually been given the Holy Spirit and things like that. And therefore, we need to believe this. But if it is not in the Bible, forget it. Okay? But be careful about that means. But you, referring to Timothy, keep your head in all situations. You need to say, keep level-headed. Endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry. What it is saying is, the ministry of keeping the church according to the faith has its challenges, and it's not going to be easy all the time. Paul is charging Timothy to preach the gospel, to pass on the Christian faith as a faithful evangelist. The role also means that Timothy is to be, like I said, spiritual father to the churches and believers under his care. Did you know how Paul called Timothy in his letter? You know how he addressed him? This is how he addressed him. To Timothy, my true son, that is in 1 Timothy. That's the greeting of the letter. In 2 Timothy, Timothy, my dear son. How do we look at our brethren? Do we look at them as our friends, or do we look at them as our brothers and sisters in the faith? Paul, as a leader, as a father figure, as an apostle, considers Timothy as his son. Not blood related, but spiritually, he is his son. And that means a lot. You know? That's so encouraging to Timothy, that someone, a giant of the Christian faith, would call you his son, his true son, okay? His dear son. Or you can say also daughter. If that is how Paul considers Timothy, how should we also in the church need to consider our young children in the church, our young people, our youth? Do we have that attitude that Paul had in being responsible to our youth's faith? That we take on that responsibility as if we are parents of those children. So when we look at our children, our youth in the church, do we who are older in the faith take that responsibility or take that desire to serve them because they are our sons and our daughters in the faith? Here, the seniors, okay? Let's talk about, kanina parati ko na-mention kasi senior, hindi na maka-memorize and all that. But, you know, we have seniors, and perhaps we seniors may not have much in terms of memory, but we have much in terms of faith experience. And I think we need to make use of that and be active in some of these youth ministry. Not so much that we take on the leadership of those ministries, but maybe there is something that we can share to our youth in the church. Your experience and your experiences are of so much value that sometimes I regret that we are not taking too much advantage of that. Okay? So I think you are welcome. If you want to be involved, please. We want you to be involved. We want you to be involved. We who are older in the faith should be aware that our serious responsibility to the next generation of believers in our church. The youth and new believers in our particular church, GLF, may account for, say, about 40% of our attendance. I'm not exactly sure, but that's just a guess. So 40% of our attendance is probably teenagers and those below that. Okay? However, they make up 100% of our future leaders and attendees of our church. If we don't take care of them, that 40% will probably not become part of our church. So we want them, 40% now, but 100% later, they will be our future leaders. So let's make sure we take note of that. So when we look back at our particular faith journeys, I want you now to think about these questions for our reflection questions. When you look back at look at yourself. Let's look at ourselves. Our particular faith journeys. Who was it that made you commit to the Christian faith? Do you remember a person? I do remember a person. When I was in high school, somebody introduced me to the 4 spiritual laws. It's a very small booklet, a yellow booklet. I can still remember how it looks. In your case, who was it that introduced you to your faith now? What were the circumstances of your calling? Do you remember? Can you recall how it felt? Were you excited? Were you on fire? Were you so willing to go to church service even if it takes an hour to 2 hours of bus trip or jeepney trip just to be in services? Do you remember those times? How was your faith journey like? Isn't it amazing how God has worked through you during those times? Provided all your needs? How about today? Are we still as excited and on fire about our Christian faith? Do we have the desire to share it with others? How then do we do it to our children and family members? We have, in the old Worldwide Church of God, we have an article that says why you should not convert others. Does anybody remember that? Okay. Converting others or sharing your faith is a no-no in WCG before. Because we believe that it's God's calling and they bring them, God calls them to the church, and whoever comes in the church will be those who are called. Anybody who doesn't come voluntarily to church is not being called. So there was no sharing. Okay? But that is, of course, is not the way we believe it now. Jesus Christ went all the way to the villages. He didn't wait for people to come to him. He went to the Samaritan villages. He made sure he crossed the villages of the Gentiles just to make sure he has an encounter with them. So, there is a sharing that has to happen. But when it comes to how we look at our faith now, are we still excited? Are we still on fire? Perhaps this is something we can take time to think about and maybe share experiences with one another. Also, as a church, how well are we demonstrating our faith to one another, especially to those who are young and new in the church? I feel that this can happen in little talks, in coffee clutch. Before we used to have that, in meal times, sharing meals, having little Bible studies, grouping ourselves as groups of 12 or 10 and then going through scriptures. I think this is important. This particular setting in which you hear a sermon is good, but it has lots of limitations. Okay? I talk, you don't. It's one way. But in a group setting and in a small group setting, everybody gets to share. And we learn from one another. That's the way it ought to be. Because our faith journeys, our life during the week, during the past week, may have something in there that we can use to build another person. Your experiences build the faith of another, and theirs builds yours. One time we had a meal, supposed to be potluck, pero na-postpone pala yung potluck. Pero yung iba, nagdala na rin ng potluck. Diba? This happened, I think, 3 weeks ago. And then, so sabi ko, sige, potluck. Yung iba hindi nagdala kasi hindi naman talaga dapat magdala. So, kami dun sa room. And then, pumasok ako. And then, sabi ko, naku, napakaraming tao. Pero pupunti yata yung pagkain. Okay? But you know what? Everybody shared. And to my surprise, nabusog ako. And everybody else. And it was fun. You know? Isn't it amazing that a meal can actually build faith? Isn't it amazing that it's not always sharing about Bible verses, but it is in the fellowship, in being friends, and being family that makes us close as a church. So I value yung meal times na yan, and I think, you know, if that works for us, then we should put some emphasis on that. We should have more of that. So, you know, but I also would I'd like to suggest a few more things also, okay? Our church is very limited. We have very limited space. And I would like also to, maybe this is from me as ano lang ha, take this as a suggestion. But perhaps when we finish our worship service, sana wala po sanang tutugtog, wala po sana munang meeting right away, or if you need to really meet, go to a separate room, because people are talking. You know that? And it's good to see that. When people are sharing, telling stories, but when we are playing the instruments and then it becomes very loud, what happens is it makes us just go out of the hall rather than stay and maybe get to know one another better. So these are things that maybe we need to be more conscious of. If we have meetings, we can maybe just delay it a bit. Maybe after a few minutes when everybody just has settled a little bit, and then we can go to our room. So what we want is that people stay. That's all I'm saying here. We want people to stay. We want people to remain with us. This, you know, talk, and share, and fellowship. So the objective is to encourage fellowship and meaningful conversations and connections. So in conclusion, brethren, we have learned that as a Christian family, as a Christian church, we are given the most serious task of passing on our faith to our children. It is a most serious obligation, yet the most rewarding, since faith secures the eternal future of our children in Jesus Christ. We have learned that parents must be the primary models of faith to their children. We see that in the life of Timothy. We have learned also that children must be constantly affirmed and encouraged to live their faith and grow in it. And the church, and as a church, we must be responsible to pass on the faith to the greater church family of believers, primarily the young and the youth, the new in our fellowship. We don't need to force our faith on our children. We just need to exemplify and live that faith as best we could. We need not fear being perfect or being imperfect in our walk, but we need to walk faithfully no matter what. Don't worry about making mistakes in your walk with God. Don't worry about making mistakes in the face of your children, but walk faithfully nonetheless. God will provide the wisdom. God will provide the strength for us. And God will call our children to commit their whole lives to Him when the time comes. lives. Hopefully and thankfully, they would do it because we did our part in passing on the greatest legacy we will ever hope to have. The family faith, the faith of our fathers, the faith of the apostles, the very faith of Jesus Christ himself. I urge all of us, let us live the faith, let us share the faith, and let us pass on that faith. Amen.